Greetings. I am Baymax, your personal healthcare companion.
Here is our first toy, the Action Enforcer. We're going to be doing these in alphabetical order to make it a lot easier for you to find. And this one's going to be pretty quick because this is a pretty simple little toy. All its purpose really is to force the player to perform a certain action. Before we go into that, though, let's go ahead and just take a look at the toy. It's pretty simple. There are no properties. It just does what it does, and it only allows for a logic connection, but only one, and that's action attempted. And that's pretty important to note that is action attempted and not action completed. It does it whatever you tell it to do. It'll be at the beginning of the action. So if it's a long animation, you could either have the animation interrupted by what you're wanting to do, or the logic connection will break altogether and not work. You can use anything to cause actions to happen. We're going to use a trigger button right now to show you how it works, but you can use anything really that provides a logic connection, and I'll show you more of those over there. Real quick, we'll go into the trigger. Yep. We'll go into the trigger with the right button. Start a new logic connection, stepped on. We're going to do any today because it's just us in here. And then we're going to select our Action Enforcer and look at what we can do. These are all the actions that you can have a player do. Starting from the top, you have Celebrate, Lament, Trip, Bloat, Freeze, Knockback, Web, Shock, and Float. And for the purposes of what we're doing right this second, we're just going to say Celebrate. Now once you choose an action, you can choose who is going to do the action. Either the targeting player, that'd be whoever steps on the button, everyone in the toy box, or any one of the individual players. What that's good for is if you want to have like a freeze tag type game, you can have each player have their own button, and the idea is to, if you hit player 2's button and you're player 1, you score a point by freezing him, and then he maybe tries to shoot you to not push the button or whatever. But today we're gonna hit triggering player just so you can see how this works. And then when we step on it, he goes and does his little celebration animation. Every figure has their own, and that was his. So we're gonna go over here now, and we set up one for each of the different actions we can do, so we can let you take a look at them. You can really use anything you want, but for the last two, we're using trigger areas for a very specific reason, and I'll show you that when we get there. So let's start with the first one. We'll turn around so you can see him in all his glory. There he is. Boom, Celebrate. See,
Friendly competition is very healthy.
He just does a little celebration. You can use that maybe at the end of a quest. When the quest giver says you did a good job, you can make the player look happy. Here's the next one. It's Lament.
It looks like I'm in need of an upgrade.
And Lament just makes him look mad. So if the player does something wrong or makes the wrong choice, you can very easily make him aware of that by making his piece look angry. The next one is Trip. What it does is it throws you in whichever direction you were walking in the first place. As you saw, I went backwards. This time I went forward. What you can do is throw that maybe in a hallway connected to a trigger plate or a trigger area. And if it's like, say, the wrong hallway, you can have the player trip and then maybe get attacked by monsters while he's down. The next one is Bloat. Bloat is really more for comic effect. Makes their head blow up pretty big. The nice thing about Bloat is you can chain it with something else, so that way his head gets bigger and maybe he trips or gets angry. There's lots of ways you can have fun with Bloat. Freeze is that one I was telling you about. It doesn't last very long, and it does knock you back a little bit, so you do want to be careful how you trigger that, because if you could get thrown in a loop if you walk, say, too far and he gets thrown back onto the button. Knockback. Now, knockback is very similar to trip, except no matter which direction you're going, you will always be knocked backwards. So if you want to add something to, say, an invisible barrier or a wall to give them the impression that they really don't want to go somewhere, you can always throw knockback on there. It looks pretty good. Now here comes the last two. Oh no, there's one more before the last two. Web. Web is a lot like Freeze, except it uses the web. It's added because of the Marvel. It's Spider-Man's signature move. It's used pretty much for the same reason as Freeze. You can have a lot of fun with it. Now the last two. There's a reason we're using trigger areas instead of buttons. The first one is shock. As you see, he jumps up a little bit, gets shocked, and lands back down. So if you were to do this on a button, he would continually hit the button over and over, and you would get stuck in a loop. And you really don't want to do that, because then unless you've saved recently, you've lost all of your work. And the last one is similar, and that's float. Whee! Throws you up in the air for a few seconds, and then you land back down. And if you land back down on that button, you'll float right back up in the air. Now that can be fun if you're actually purposefully trying to do that. There are a few toys that can knock a player out of that type of a loop, but it is good to know that that happens. And that's also why the trigger box is so tall. If you look, if you get blown outside of the trigger box and then land back in the trigger box, you will start floating again. I'll actually kind of show you what that looks like. Whee! Grab that. Lower it down a bit. And walk in. See how he comes up out of it? And then he floats back down into it. And now we're in a nice little loop of floating. Now the good news is some characters have what's called aerial recovery, which allows me to keep hitting the jump button, and eventually I will end up outside of the box. But if a player doesn't know they can do that, or their character does not have that ability, they will be stuck in a never-ending loop. Well, that's the Action Enforcer in a nutshell. It's a really simple tool that'll let you add a lot of really neat storytelling opportunities into your toy boxes. If you have any questions about the toy itself or anything else in the video, go ahead and comment on the video and we'll take a look at it and try to answer it for you. If you learned something, give the video a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because we're going to be making a lot of different types of videos in the future, and I'd really hate for you to miss out. I do appreciate you watching this video, and we'll see you again next time.